Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the LSC Alumni Association of Mumbai and Western India, welcome to the first in our LSC Alumni Beats series of talks. I am Ankit Modi, the events coordinator, and I am joined today by our chair, Amrita Bhatia Babbar, vice chair, Saransh Tikku, communications coordinator, Sonia Miskita, and our students and recent graduates coordinator, Sharan Agarwal. Our guest today is none other than Karan Johar, and he will be in conversation with Udita Jhunjhunwala. Karan Johar needs no introduction, but here is one anyways. He is the acclaimed director of blockbusters such as Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, and My Name is Khan. He was also the host of Coffee with Karan, the most watched English language talk show on Indian television, and is the new host of the highly anticipated Big Boss OTT. Karan heads Dharma Productions, one of the largest studios in India, spanning every part of the media and entertainment landscape. At Dharma, he has been mentoring new talent in the form of actors, directors, and others, and he has been leading the charge in the shift from the big screen to digital platforms in this ever-changing industry. Udita Jhunjhunwala is an entertainment and lifestyle writer, film critic, and author with over 20 years of journalistic experience. Formerly the entertainment editor at Midday and the Hindustan Times, her articles and critiques have appeared in many leading publications. A member of the Film Critics Guild, Udita was also the film festival curator for the 2017 Kalagoda Arts Festival and the 10th Jagran Film Festival in 2019. Over to you, Karan and Udita.
Thank you, Ankit, and hello, Karan.
Hi, Udita. Long time, and so good to see you after so long.
You too. You look great. I'll always admire your spectacles collection, your glasses. Much cooler than these slightly geeky ones.
And these are legit glasses. I actually need to see faces with them now. It's called Touching 50.
Oh, okay. So now we've already had, in Ankit's introduction, he's summarized your professional career, and you're this multi-hyphenate, as we all know. What in all these identities, which identity do you relate to the most?
I think always and primarily I'm a filmmaker. Foremost, that will always be that one aspect of my inherent identity that is something I'm completely passionate about. Sometimes it gets a bit overshadowed by the various other activities I've indulged in. But my primary passion is making movies, is directing movies. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of gaps between films because a lot of my time went into structuring my studio, branching into verticals. But if you ask me at heart, I will always be a filmmaker first.
There's the creative aspect of you, and now there's the businessman, right? Because you've got a studio, and Dharma sort of got its hands now in various things, including talent management. So, when you have to, how do you juggle the right brain, left brain thing there?
It's tough. When I'm directing the film, I pretend I'm not producing it. And I pretend like the producer is somebody else, because then, and at one point, the CEO of my company, who's also my school and college best friend, Apurva Mehta, at many a time, and many a juncture, he's actually looked at me, he said, this is your own money, right? That, when you keep fighting to increase the budget, he says, we'll just say yes, it's your money. At the end of the day, why are you behaving like you're throwing a tantrum about your own money? The only way that, I can actually, when I direct a film, I don't wear the producer hat. Then I'm just being a passionate filmmaker trying to, juice every frame and do what it takes, to kind of make sure that I'm satisfied creatively. But many a times, you kind of oscillate and you have to. So that's why I'm a lot more compassionate to other filmmakers. We've introduced over 20 to nearly 25 filmmakers within the production house. I'm a lot more compassionate to their needs, their demands, their inherent sometimes insecurities. Because being a filmmaker, I know how you want the best for every frame of your film. And sometimes there are budgetary constraints because there is a commerce attached to the world of art.
And so as a producer, what is your process for choosing films or projects?
I mean, I like to believe that I'm very instinctive, whether it's, choosing a script that I love or a filmmaker that I decide to work with. It always is like they have to have me at hello. It's like even where it comes to a screenplay, 20 pages into the film, I just know whether I want to kind of forge forward or really get into making this film, or sometimes contrarily also that that you don't want to make that film at all. Similarly with filmmakers, from Ayan Mukherjee to Shakun Batra to Shashank Khaitan to a series of filmmakers that have worked with Dharma Productions, it's always been that first meeting that has made me feel very instinctive about taking them on and building them as filmmakers within the company. I only have an instinct. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it kicks in from. I'm blessed to say that 8 out of 10 times the instinct has gone right. And of course, there will be those, cinematic errors. You've seen many of those. And there are those that have gone wrong. And you have to acknowledge eventually that, that you went wrong, acknowledge your flaws and mistakes and, learn from them. So, yeah, so to answer your question, it's purely based on my instinct.
So when your instinct doesn't serve you, and you perhaps reject a script and it goes on to become maybe a big hit or a very commercial, critically acclaimed film, do you question yourself? Do you look at it through a different lens?
More often, Udita, it's happened more about passing on. That's happened rarely, but what's happened a lot has been something you really love on paper and you like the process of it. And then when you see the final product and you feel like things didn't add up. A film, it's a creative process of many departments. They all have to come together, align in the same vision, and then eventually come together to either make a very special film or a really bad one. So sometimes, when the latter happens, you have to, the one thing that I feel like I like to know what is wrong always. And I like to surround myself with no men instead of yes men. I like to be told what's wrong. I like to be told what, and I like to know myself. So many a times I found myself in the confines of the edit room with just the filmmaker saying, look, I think we messed up. Look, this film is not going to work. But when we step out, we're going to tell everybody, way to go, let's market the film with all the gusto. But you and I have to know that this hasn't worked out, because you cannot be deluded. That's the one big disease that I think many members of my industry have, which has no vaccination. It's called delusion. It's like when you really believe you made a classic, when it's not, I feel like when the final copy, when you see it, it's happened very rarely with me where I've really loved something and it's gone on to fail. Many a time I already know that this one's a goner. There's nothing I can do, but you can't see it, right? You are a film, you have to stand by the filmmaker, the lead cast, the crew of the film. And those are times that are really, really scary and daunting, because, you really hope against hope that you're wrong, but you just know in your gut that the film hasn't worked out.
Does that happen to you as a director as well, that feeling?
It's happened to me, predominantly, it happened to me on Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna. I remember, which I really was very attached to the material. But I remember when I saw the final cut, I was like, yeah, I think I messed up in a couple of ways. I added too many songs. I made it too big in terms of scale. The film required a more intimate treatment. And it's a film, of course, that has a lot of polarized reactions. You either like it or hate it, but you can't be indifferent to it, which is the only plus that, it has, because it has it's walking the tightrope of fidelity and infidelity. And, those are always very personal feelings to families and people and couples. And I think I was onto something really strong by the idea of making it, but I went, and I think halfway through, I kind of sold out. So I put those big set piece songs, I gave it scale, none of it, which I think that film needed. So when I saw the film, I was like, I hope that it can cross the financial barriers and kind of emerge profitable at least. But I know that that's one film I want to make again, because I think I fumbled as a filmmaker on that film.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it was a subject that was ahead of its time. I don't think we were ready for it. Maybe
I actually disagree, because I think even today people don't want to accept that there is infidelity in their lives and relationships, and everybody brushes it under the carpet. So a concept like infidelity is never really ahead of its time. It's always going to be a problem whenever you tell it, because it comes with a judgment and nobody wants to accept a home truth. I remember couples coming up to me and saying that, oh, we couldn't tell each other we really liked the film, because then one would ask the other, why did you like it? Or what did you like about it? And actually a wife telling a husband, I loved it, means it's like a passport to infidelity. And a husband saying the same thing to the wife would be the same. So I found that the couple said the easy way out was to say we hated the film. And that was the best way to kind of like, close that chapter forever. I realized that it was quite interesting, really, when I made that film about how our fabric of society is unable to kind of, I would say, face certain home truths.
I was going to come to this question later, but since you mentioned closed and home truths, like there's Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, and then how the audience reacted to it, and there's Dostana. I mean, do you think that the similar thing happened? Did men go watch it and like did it kind of freak them out?
I'm very proud of the fact that we produced Dostana, because I believe that, it brought homosexuality into conversations in the drawing rooms of India, even in the heartland or even in tier 2 cities. Of course, even in urban areas, which pretend to be really cool and woke, but aren't. I think it was the first time we addressed homosexuality. Even if it was done in a way where the two boys pretend to be gay, we at least talked about it in a mainstream offering. And I've always been a strong supporter of pushing the LGBTQ movement within my cinema. I dabbled with it even in 2003 with the Kanta Band track in Kalhona Ho, but it came a full circle with Dostana. And then I went on to direct a short film called Bombay Talkies. It was an anthology where I talked about repressed sexuality and about how many men in marriages and women in marriages are actually lying about their sexuality to conform to societal, requirements. Then, of course, the icing on the cake where it came to sexuality narrative was Kapoor and Sons, where Fawad plays a gay character and he's coming out to his family, and it was done with the right amount of sensitivity and thought. And I believe that Dostana somehow in some way, and sometimes I feel it hasn't been given credit where it really deserves, is that it opened those doors. Yes, it was criticized for being caricaturish, which it was. It's not something that I would do again. But at that point of time, we had to garb it in entertainment for the point to come across in some way. And there is actually a very progressive scene in the film where Kiran Kher actually accepts John as her son-in-law. And though it's done in humor, but there is acceptance. I've shown it. Tarun Mansukhani projected it, and the director of the film. So yeah.
Okay, so that was you as the producer. Now you as the director. How different is the Karan Johar when it comes to directing, choosing projects to direct? Some you write, some you don't, right?
It's some state of mind. When I made Kabhi Alvida, I just lost my dad. And I feel like he was my moral police always. Like, he had a certain conservative, traditional aspect, which is where Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum and somewhere Kal Ho Na Ho were born from, and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, conservative family films. When he passed away, it's like, you feel like, you don't have that policing anymore. So I wrote Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, which was something I don't think he would have liked me to have told, but I did it. Subsequently, I felt very strongly about the misrepresentation of religion, and I decided to tell the story of My Name is Khan because it was my personal secular belief. And it was my way of actually making a film which actually makes a difference to the community around me, the society we live in. I was always criticized for making films about rich people and their problems. Not to say that rich people don't have their problems. Of course they do, and emotions are universal. But that's a criticism that I wanted to tell a story that I believed in, and also somewhere, honestly, to change the tide for myself as a filmmaker. That doesn't help when your next film after that is Student of the Year, because while you may have changed the tide a little bit and then you go back to square one, you're like, okay, basically he took a mild deviation, but he's back to basics and he's back to his roots. Now, I needed to make Student of the Year to just after two very heavy films, I wanted to make a holiday film. Wanted to make my high school musical. I don't think that film is shaking any cinematic mountains. It was never intended to. It was me having fun with music, dance, and lots of youth. The older you grow, the more young you want to feel. And that's really why I made Student of the Year. Ae Dil Hai Mushkil is a product of my own broken heart. I've had a very strong unrequited love relationship in my life. And I felt that I needed to cathartically challenge that into a narrative, which is what I did.
Right.
So it's always, to answer the question, it's always my state of mind that dictates my cinematic choices.
Which then very neatly brings us to ask you, in Rocky and Rani, what is your state of mind now going forward to your next film, which you've announced, Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani, for those
Rocky
who
Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani is with Ranveer Singh and Alia Bhatt, and my state of mind was again to have lots of fun. Like, I think we've all had a very pressured 2 years. There's been a lot of stress. There's been isolation. There's been depression. There's been anxiety. There's been a sense of like deep-rooted insecurity. And I feel I needed to make a film that was a celebration of what we really love about Indian cinema, which is happiness, songs, dances, fun, like life. Like I needed a film to literally and figuratively have all the entertainment oxygen in the film. And I really wanted to make that film because I felt like I don't want to do anything hard-hitting, too dramatic, too depressing or sad or too real for that matter, because I'm not feeling very real right now. I'm feeling like I need to be unreal again, but of course do it in my way, in a lot more updated fashion. So that's where I think that film was born.
Right. You professionally, what has at the moment, because you're doing, this Big Boss, OTT, there's your direction, there's everything that Dharma Productions, your talent shop is doing. What is it that has you most excited right now?
Right now, I'm very excited about two things. A, directing a feature film after a gap of nearly 5 years. So being back on set and, wearing the filmmaker hat is something that I'm exceptionally excited about. The other is really cultivating Dharmatic, because I believe digital is a large part of our entertainment future, and I really want to get that right. It's a strong vertical within the Dharma production fold, and we've already told some interesting, unusual, and kind of off-the-cuff narratives. And we recently so we've done a bit of a plethora of things. We've had some fun. While we told a very relevant film like Guilty, which was about the Me Too movement, we also did something absolutely cringy, like Fabulous Lives of Bollywood Wives. It's what you call a cringe binge. And we said the more cringy, the better it will be to binge. So we went down that path. And then we also had a very interesting anthology called Ajib Dastans, which again had, I think, a collection of really exciting films. So we've kind of we're doing things that are like assorted, to say that, but also very excited about all the things that were in development and are going to come out soon on various OTT platforms.
We'll talk a little bit more about digital and OTT, because that's something that's so front of mind for all of us right now. But before we get to that, then the pandemic, and we talked about how tough it's been. The shuttering of cinemas has really we've had to sort of relook at the whole entertainment model in a way, right? And one of the things that I've sort of wondered about is whether the marquee star has suffered with this, right? Because they are totally dependent on box office and theatrical release. And there's a whole new crop of talent that is ruling digital at the moment. Do you think it's finally time for the old guard to hand over the reins?
Well, I don't think anyone needs to hand over the reins. There is an old guard that just have to start possibly playing their age. And there is enough role and enough content and enough matter for them to actually engage themselves with. All of them, everyone who's been a superstar for over 3 decades obviously has abundant talent to keep that consistency going. And if they just have to possibly realize that they have to kind of take that switch from one zone to another, and that's all they need to do. There is so much content that you can do that can be great. What is called mainstream and commercial, the concept of that is changing and evolving as we speak. We used to have a certain fixed notion, but I think even pre-pandemic, we had realized that, it was only the great stuff that worked as content worked on celluloid. There were those one or two kind of outliers that were senseless, brainless movies that even did the numbers, but those happen all the time. That happens even in the West. You'll find some ridiculous films that do amazing theatrical numbers. So we'll always have those. But really, I think everyone has woken up to content. And that's predominantly because I think the digital revolution has really sprung up some really strong writers, not just actors. It's the empowerment of writers that have taken place only because now they have a legit platform where they get respected, because digital shows are all a writer's medium, and writers get empowered, writers get respected, and finally, thank God for the fact that writers get paid. They get paid top dollar, as they should have been for many, many decades, and they haven't in Indian entertainment, and now they are. So now they're energized, they're incentivized, and now they're writing better films. So I think this entire revolution is going to help even our cinema, not just the digital part of it.
And obviously the idea is that there will be a hybrid, that both theatrical and OTT will coexist.
Yes, because I believe what's going to happen, and people say, oh, our cinema's dead. No, no cinemas are not dead. Cinemas are not ever going to die. The magic and the community viewership and the magic of the big screen entertainment will remain forever. But here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. I think there will be a sharp divide of content. There will be certain, like there will be the big event film and the very high concept film. Big event film is the Bahubali. High concept is Badhai Ho. Just to give you an example, those will go theatrically because they are so intriguing because of either their scale or their content. And then all the other genres and subgenres that come in between, which could include a horror, a thriller, rom-com, which used to be dictating box office in the 90s and no longer performs, could actually go straight to digital. So you will find an audience. So that's where we have to alter our way. And of course, nothing is carved in stone. There will again be outliers and exceptions, but I think broadly, this is what will happen. Big event films, high concept, theatrical, everything in between digital.
Oh, so lots of stuff for us to watch. Having said that, I mean, this whole thing of binge watching, okay, which I find very exhausting. But this has become like a thing. Oh, I binge watched it. It's almost like a badge of honor. What does binge watching mean for the media and entertainment industry and models of the future, especially if content production can't keep up with demand?
Well, I mean, we've had those problems because of the pandemic, because so Netflix and Amazon, I think, came up with this concept of binge watching, because for them, they felt like the wait week after week was not coexisting with the very, very distracted mind of today, because you have so much going on that what we call our telephone is like an object of doom in our hands on a daily basis. We're like actually so engaged with it that we stopped engaging in people. We stopped engaging in conversations. Old world romance has gone out the window. Really constructive conversations no longer happen. Nobody's in the moment. Everyone's in the phone. So with the result, because you're so distracted constantly by social media, they felt that if you give gaps between episodes, people will just lose track and therefore lose connect. So the concept of binge watching actually came because of the distracted mind as a result of overt technology. Yes, the demand will have to kind of be matched by the supply. And that's why try today, Udita, I'm a producer, I want to cast an actor, and I call them, no one's free. All the good talent, good writers, everyone's busy, everyone. And I'm really happy and proud about the fact that there's so many good, talented writers and actors and directors who are finally engaged so strongly that they don't have time. We used to be like, at filmmakers, we were like the gold standard in the zone of entertainment. We're no longer, we're fighting for silver right now. Like that's what we're doing.
Do you think the traditional, you kind of touched on this a little while ago, but I just wonder if you can expand on this. Do you think the traditional narratives of Hindi cinema will stand up to the evolving consumption patterns and home delivery of content?
Yes, because, well, I mean, we'll have to stand up to it if we maintain our relevance. The only way we will be able to kind of combat what's going on in the world of digital, in the digital world right now, is if we actually amplify our content and really create something that that warrants that bum on that seat. You can't just get away with template stuff anymore. It's exhausting. When you see a film that just from the very onset just looks like you've seen it a million times before, you don't even want to continue watching it, so it's like you've got to up your game. We all have to up our game. We have to keep up with the digital Joneses. We need to do that, because eventually we will cave into a deep dark hole if we don't. So maintaining relevance of our times, being aware of audience taste, and not believing that you know better than an audience, because an audience time and again has proven that they're far more progressive than the minds creating content. They will suddenly accept something path-breaking. You're like, oh, this is something, how did this film do 100 crores? It was not meant to, it didn't have music, it didn't have this, it didn't have that. So we can't put our cinema into slots anymore. We really need to up our content game. For that, better writers, and as I said, empowerment of writers, even in the cinema creation zone, has to happen. Like, for example, if you see Malayalam cinema, it's way ahead of any other cinema that India produces. It's because for them, content comes first. They no longer have given the mantle to a superstar. They no longer, roll the red carpet for a superstar. They roll the red carpet for a great story. And I think that's what we all have to realize. And actors have to realize that they are no longer at the forefront of making a film extraordinary. It's actually what the film is all, the screenplay, the hardbound narrative, the writer. Again, I go back to the writer because I believe the writer needs that energy. When I say Malayalam cinema, and I beseech everyone who's hearing this, is to really, really go and scout for some of the most fantastic pieces of work that Malayalam cinema is producing. And we not only just Malayalam cinema, there's so many gems that the digital world is now springing up. Fortunately, they now have a, like the other day, of course, barring all the films when I saw a film like Sir a couple of months ago that was on Netflix. And I realized, thank God for Netflix, because that film wouldn't have stood any ground in a cinema hall. But now there'll be so many more. It was on the top list of Netflix for a couple of weeks. That means people were watching it, and that's great. Today, if you see a film like The Great Indian Kitchen, which is one of the finest Malayalam films I've seen in recent times. Again, thank God for the platforms, because now people will watch that, discover other cinemas, So yeah, so there's lots going to happen and lots is happening.
And that actually, it was on a regional platform, and then Amazon picked it up because it was doing so well and people couldn't access it. So it's fantastic that it's now available to more of us through Amazon. But, regional cinema really has become a strong contender. You're also working with talent from there, with producers, you're doing collaborations. Is this the competition is a concern? Because before, the dubbing, subtitling thing used to be an issue, but now we've kind of gotten accustomed to it through OTTs. We're accustomed to reading subtitles. We're accessing all of this. Is the leveling of the playing field a real concern?
Of course it is, but it's also inspiring. I think the only way you can get brilliant is if you acknowledge the brilliance of others. If you don't acknowledge what is brilliant, you'll never get there. And sometimes, having that sense of self is very critical, and maybe individually people have it, but as a community of filmmakers in Hindi cinema, when I speak about Hindi cinema, we all need to really realize that we have to understand that there is great stuff being made and great stuff being produced and absolutely amazing content that is out there in the world of Indian entertainment. We cannot just think that we can do the been there, done that template and get away with it anymore. Right. Like, for me, I believe that you can only level yourself with them is when you're aware of how brilliant they are. Knowledge is very critical.
You mentioned, Great Indian Kitchen, and are there any other recommendations? What have you been watching, and what other films or shows would you recommend?
Naya 2, I loved.
Across languages, across the board.
Of course, Naya 2, which I loved, which is, I think, Naya 2 is also a Malayalam film, if I'm not mistaken. It's on Netflix. It's Nayattu, Naya 2, which was an absolutely amazing film. Of course, everybody has seen, I don't know if everyone's seen Kumbalani Nights, and which is, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I hope people have seen Super Deluxe. I'm also saying some of the tentpole properties that that the people can watch. Super Deluxe is amazing. Kumbalani Nights is fantastic. In fact, Vetri Maran, who's one of my favorite filmmakers in the world, really, he's made a film called Asuran, which actually has Dhanush in the lead and went on to win the national award last year. Vetri Maran has also made a film called Vada Chennai, which to me is one of the best gangster films ever made. Vetri Maran is like fantastic. So there's a lot out there. I mean, this is just some things on the top of my head. I don't know if you watch a lot of Vetri Maran, but he's really fantastic.
What is the one he did? He did that other one which was set in a prison. I forgot. I'm going to look it up and I'll share on this chat.
Watch Asuran. It's hard hitting.
Asuran, I want to. So that's from Tamil and Malayalam cinema. But what about like other stuff? Just stuff that you might have been watching, since we've all been just binge watching for 1.5 years.
I mean, I was obsessed with. I fell back in love with Kate Winslet after Mayor of Easttown. I also think HBO makes some spectacular content. HBO is really quite something, when it comes to their content. So I loved Mayor of Easttown. It was actually fantastic. I watch a lot of Mexican and Spanish shows. Some of them are cheesy, some of them are fun. So I saw El Inocente. I think it's El Innocent. I think it's a Spanish show. Really good. Very thrilling. I absolutely loved it. I've seen practically everything, but somehow in recent times, a show that blew my mind was Mayor of Easttown. It was just 6 episodes, but like it was every hour of that 6 hours is pure genius. And she is just pure genius. She's
amazing. That's on Disney Plus Hotstar for those who might want to access it.
Mayor of Yeah, and there was also a show which I absolutely loved. It's on YouTube. It's an Indian show called Aspirants. It's made by TVF, the viral The Viral Fever, the TVF guys made it. It's 5 episodes. It's been sponsored by an academy, and it's really fantastic. It's really quite fantastic. Very well written. It's all about the world of the UPSC exam, but it's really, really solid. And some amazing performances and amazing writing. Please watch The Aspirants. It's a YouTube show.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to, writers and the importance that's being given to writers. There was a time till a few years ago when we felt that there were no original stories left, right? There were so many remakes, there were copies, there was the same six story ideas that were being reinvented. I feel that somewhere now with this whole attention to writers and with the OTT and digital boom, I feel there are suddenly lots more original stories and a lot of very interesting from all kinds of genres, right? We're not just looking at the UP-based hinterland stories, but now they're coming from all over the country. What has happened? I know is it just the importance that's been given to writers, or have we finally found the confidence to mine within our own local stories and our culture and our literature? What has changed?
I think what happened is when the digital boom came in, there was just not one writer. There were writers' rooms. Needed writers' rooms, and because there were writers' rooms, every project had 3 to 4 writers, and each of them, some of them very talented people. So there was suddenly so many writers' rooms created across the board, and the writers multiplied, or the requirement for writers multiplied. As a result of this, those writers who were part of writers' rooms were also great individually. So then they started writing their own stuff. And, and because the shows were good, you kind of wanted to know who all were in the writer's room, and then, started going out and reaching out to those writers. So I think the concept of the writer's room really expanded exponentially, the number of writers that expanded over a period of time. That's why there are so many writers writing so many great scripts. Then, of course, everyone's also gone back to strong content. It's just not anymore about prerequisites of mainstream cinema. So there are some great writers who are adapting books, who are telling true stories, who are writing across genres without the ramifications of the box office, because the digital world doesn't give you the pressure of box office. Those repercussions don't come in your way. With the result, you're far more empowered to tell the story the way you want to, without like the what ifs. What if the film doesn't open? What if the film doesn't perform? What if it's rejected? So those constraints are no longer binding many writers. So they've just suddenly found wings and they're flying.
Right.
That's what's happening.
As someone who's also, a part of the industry at large, what do you think the outlook is for the industry in the future? A year from now, 2 years from now?
I guarantee you when I say this, that 2023 onwards is going to be a new golden period for us. It's going to be amazing where it comes to cinema, theatrical, as well as digital content. It's going to be fantastic. I just believe it, that everyone, all the people who are lying like suppressed energies are all going to explode in the best possible way. We're going to go double fold, triple fold in terms of the contents coming out of our country. I also feel that we're going to be recognized much more globally than we are even today. There are filmmakers that are doing great work. Also, the worlds are going to collide and coexist. I think there'll be a lot of filmmakers and writers that will be working with us and vice versa. There's going to be a lot of stuff. 2023 will begin that journey. Literally by the end of this decade, we'll be on the map in a huge way.
And what do you think will be the next big thing? I know it's like a soothsayer prophecy thing, but if you were to gaze into a crystal ball, what would you say?
I would say the big event film coming out of India. There has to be that one. Bahubali was an Indian breakthrough film. We need a couple more of those that will actually put us on the global arena. Where actually we need that. We need to create our own Marvel. We need our own Avengers, but not Me Too's of them. Our own authentic stories within the tradition and I would say the stories of India. And those need to break through and become massive. There's so much talk of course, we ourselves are making a massive big event film called Brahmastra. And so I'm not just talking about that. There's also talk about Ramayana being made in a massive way that talks about so many, stories deeply rooted in our mythology and done with a new lens, done with a new take, and I think I'm waiting for those breakthrough pieces of cinema to come out.
Right. Has your gauge, as a parent now, has your gauge changed about what a family-friendly film should be?
Uh, I mean, I feel like very strongly that we should have, and I hope we can work towards that, where we don't have censorship but certification. Because, there is definitely something that would work for, which is PG-13, something that, yes, it's okay for a 15-year-old, and then it's fine for post-18. So I think that we should just define what the film is for. Like some are universal viewership films, because you don't want very impressionable minds to watch some things at a certain age. As a parent, I understand that. I understand every parent's anxiety about what their children should consume. But having said that, I wish it was just slotted into certification, as opposed to just ad hoc UA, A or U. Like that makes, because UA and U mean the same thing eventually. And adult is that. But I wish that, and I don't say this, and then I think it's towards individual parents about how they can control the consumption at home. Because I don't think that that is something that you can just blame the digital universe for, that, oh, they're coming up with stuff, kids are watching it. Look, I'm a parent, and you have to be a conscious parent. You have to be aware of your child's surrounding at all given points of time. And that doesn't mean that you clip their wings at all. The only way you can allow a child to grow is if you kind of give them space to breathe in. But within that space, there has to be some element of awareness that you have. So that's all I say, is that to all the parents, just be aware. Just be aware of your child's environment. That's all. I'm not asking you to restrict it. Just awareness is everything. Similarly, when you talk about what do I perceive a family film to be? I perceive a family film to be that, of course, can be viewed without any discomfort caused, with senior members or even with your children. But I wish that we had certification to dictate those choices.
But since you mentioned certification, and we talk about very briefly about censorship, a lot of creative people, they've taken on, adopted a kind of self-censorship currently. Do you feel that creative people are stifled? Do you think that there is enough space to be free in your expression?
I think it's an individual choice. A lot of people just say they're stifled when they haven't gone out and done anything. It's important, really, it's important to be woke enough to know that what you're communicating to an audience is very critical. Whether it's your theories of feminism, or whether it's your theories about aspects that we have taken for granted over the years. We've done all the wrong things in our cinema. We projected women incorrectly. We've body shamed people. We've sexuality shamed them. We've color shamed them, all in the name of humor. And now you just have to be aware of that. You just have to be aware of that. And yes, you can do content that is sensational. Of course, you have to be aware that we live in a climate where we have to always kind of watch our P's and Q's in a certain way, because, we do want our film to release. But having said that, we have to somewhere tell a story to its organic truth. If we believe in it, we have to tell it. And sometimes there will be repercussions, but combating those repercussions has always been the order of the day. We've always had, it's happened to me so many times. God knows I've had films that have been banned on release, and I've had like all kinds of FIRs lodged against me and the films and all. But, none of that really matters if your film is strong and definitely intended to, it's well intended. It'll always find an audience.
You mentioned woke a couple of times, which is such a social media term. What is your sort of, as someone who has been so active in social media, how do you feel about the, and you're a massive celebrity, of course, but how do you feel about very fluid definition of celebrity in the age of social media influencers?
Well, I think, social media influencers it's like someone asked me the other day, someone told oh, I'm a social media influencer, and the person turned around and said, well, yeah, but what do you really do? What is your actual job? And I, not to undermine, because there's so many social media who are really good influencers. They're doing a great job. But there's also there's also like a joining the party lot who are not doing anything and are calling themselves social media influencers. How have you qualified to be an influencer? Do you really know what you're talking about and writing about and blogging about? You just can't say I'm an influencer. One morning I can't wake up and say I'm a doctor. I'm not. Or one morning I can't just say I'm an engineer, or one morning I can't say I'm like an astronaut. Similarly, you can't just wake up and say I'm an influencer. How dare you say you're an influencer? Where have you got the power to influence? And the power doesn't come from just economics. It comes from actual knowledge. It comes from you have knowledge on a field. If you're a sports influencer, you have to have enough academia attached to sport. If you are a fashion influencer, did you go to fashion school? Did you go and study fashion? Did you actually do the academia for you to be an influencer? If you're a food influencer, do you know how to cook? Just because you eat doesn't make you a food blogger. You know, there are many people, I blog on food. I can't cook, but I can eat. I mean, if you can eat, we can all be food bloggers. So I believe that social influence, media influencers, and a lot that happens on social media is a lot of nonsense. Pardon my French, but it all sucks sometimes. You know, it's like, I mean, some people are born trollers, some people are born appreciators. Both are fine, you know, as long as, you know, you as an audience are aware of that. I believe social media is an amazingly powerful phenomena. I just feel sometimes it just goes into the wrong hands, and it gives people power who are faceless and nameless. You know, so I think social media has its upside, but it has terrible downsides. You know, there's a dark, deep area that social media has. And if you fall prey to them, it could affect your mental health. So you have to be very strong. When you're a celebrity, you have to wear like very thick skin, because I know from my personal experience, I wake up to abuse every morning and I sleep to abuse. Now, if I started taking those people seriously, I would go and live under an MRI, because I would be so unwell. But you have to rise above it, because you have to know that eventually there are faceless, nameless people. And the one thing that I get very happy about is like, oh, thank God they're not being indifferent to me. Because, you know, you can hate me or love me, but indifference is like a curse. You know, if being indifferent to me would really kill me, because I believe that relevance is longevity. When you're relevant, you will remain in the game much longer. So I take trolls like that, and I'm like, and I tell everybody, even teenagers who are worried about their followers, who are worried about, you know, how popular they are, who are worried about how they look when they try to put on filters and apps to look thinner and fairer. And I just want to tell them, please enjoy who you are. You're beautiful. Please don't let what happens on social media influence your core. You know, it really is a vortex that can suck you in. Look at it from the outside perspective. Enjoy the party that it is, but please don't go so thick into the party that all the noise that surrounds you can deafen you. That's the only way I look at it.
So, this is something I wanted to ask you actually, because social media really can be very brutal, and it's also very reactive. So what are your tips, if you had to give like 5 tips for surviving on social media? If you're not an influencer, if you're just someone like me, you just burst my bubble on that, by the way.
No, one thing, what are my tips is like, firstly, follow who you really love and not who you don't care about, because, you know, those people will start then, you know, distracting you for no reason. Follow people who you really are interested in. Like, I may be really interested in Kim Kardashian, so I follow her, you know, because I really am interested in the Spanx that she's making. That really excites me for some weird reason. I don't know why. I just keep wondering about whether they should make them for men or not, and I think we all need it. But that's one. But I'm like, follow who you really are excited and interested in. Secondly, do not take the comments seriously. They mean nothing. I repeat, they mean nothing. They come from faceless, nameless people. Thirdly, if engage and do the things that you love. If you want to pout on camera and put it out, don't believe that if a friend tells you, hey, why are you doing so much of that? You know, it's a bit like attention seeking. You want to seek attention, seek it. It's fine. You know, the fourth thing is, please don't feel compelled, again, which is the opposite of 3, to post everything every day. Like, you know, we don't need to see the salad you eat, the sunset that is outside of your terrace, or, you know, what your bathroom looks like. Please don't feel compelled to post on a daily basis. Right. That's the fourth thing. And fifth, and most importantly, once in a while, do a digital detox. It really helps.
So you mentioned about, thank you. I'm actually going to take a lot of that on board. No more salad pictures for sure. You know, the other side of this is that, because you said you wake up to, you know, all kinds of messages. What is the most outrageous rumor you've heard about yourself?
Oh, that I'm straight.
That was a rumor.
There was. I got some marriage proposals, and I was like, wake up and smell the coffee. Like, you know, I ain't getting married, honey, and definitely not to you.
Coffee with a K. Okay, but I'm curious, because, you know, my profession and all that. How do you view the current entertainment, media, and journalism scenario? And, you know, the way journalism is conducted, interviews are conducted, reviews, do they have as much import now, just in the, when there's so much of it is paid and bought, and Instagram and vlogs and instant reactions, or do you believe in the T.S. Eliot phrase of teach us to care and not to care?
So where do I begin about the world of media, Udita?
Please begin.
While I say that, okay, so just like there are bad films and bad films and good films, there are also good members of the media, and there are those that have succumbed to the system, which is like, made them commercialize themselves to such an extent that what they write, they've been paid for legit wise. It's called media net. We've given it a legit terminology now. Yeah. But then there are those, such as yourself, who have actually held the baton of very strong, earnest, and opinionated journalism that comes from a place of no bias. So I always say that where there is the good, there will be the bad, and there will be the ugly. So you appreciate the good, annul the bad, and absolutely turn your face from the ugly. And that's what I'm doing with the world of media. Is no different from the world of the filmmakers and films. We have good, bad, and ugly. Similarly, with the world of the media, we have. Though what saddens me is when there are certain members of the media who have a power which is a mirage. It doesn't really exist, but they think they do have it. And they believe they can alter people's minds and careers. Those people, the toxicity of that is what saddens me, because, they invest so much in being negative because they think they can pull people down. But they have to remember that eventually what I feel and say cannot harm anyone. No matter how much I think I have the power to, I don't. Nobody does. Everyone actually is a master of their own destiny. So even a member of the media who thinks they can pull someone down, they can't. And if you believe it, then that's the end of your doom. So that's what saddens me when I see certain members of the media who actually believe they have the power to destroy. I wish many members of the media just believed in the power of creation and not of destruction. So other than that, I'm very happy with just dealing with the good.
And do you still care what kind of star rating your
yeah, I care. I care. Listen, I was that kid in school that fought for half a mark. Like I went to my teachers and professors and insisted, why did I get an 8 on 10? Why not an 8.5? I deserve that extra half. I'm that kid who reads my report card thoroughly. And so when my film is out, I read everyone's reviews. I care about criticism because that's the only way you can get yourself better. I read every reviews, the good, the bad, the ugly. I love the stars that I get. I like that rating that we get. I like it. I go to IMDb and see how my film, of course, these days it's so crazy because, there are fan clubs that start giving you 0 on 10 or 1 on 10 because they don't like the star in the film, or they have a competing star that they don't want to kind of see rise or whatever. But I read everything. I'm not disconnected from anything that is out there about me or my film. I think awareness is paramount.
That's great, Karan. We have so many questions coming in. I'm going to actually start taking a few now. I don't know who they're from, so I'm just getting questions without names. In your experience, how does one balance writing commercial content in India in which you stay true to your opinions, but also not alienate the audience or drive away production companies and OTT platforms?
How do you maintain your balance in commercial content, but also kind of not
stay true, in which you stay true to your opinions, but not alienate the audience or drive away distributors, exhibitors?
I think very honestly, you can strike that balance about telling very progressive content and not something that you go so kind of like intellectual or subversive that it doesn't connect with a larger audience. For example, in our own production house, I made a Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, which is an OTT, overtly theatrical, completely out there family film. But we also made a Kapoor and Sons, which was actually nuanced. It didn't drive a large audience, but it put the point across. So I think it's really how delicately you can handle your film, but also make it engaging. Don't bore people, don't preach too much, but yet put your point out with as much subtlety and nuance, and also keep your length tight. If it's a film that is not offering the prerequisite mainstream offerings, then keep your film as tight as you can.
Someone else asked, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a creative business like yours?
Um,
A big one.
well, yeah, well, it's well, what advice can I do? If it's your passion, then please follow it through. Understand that if you really want to do it, and it depends what vertical of creativity you're talking about. Are you talking about writing? Are you talking about producing a film? Are you talking about, I mean, first just gain the knowledge about it, actively be on ground, work towards it if you're really passionate about it, and then pursue it. Don't just walk into it like a social media influencer. Just make sure that you're learned enough for you to pursue it. A lot of people, I have the money, can I make a film? I'm like, no, because it's a job. You have to know and be passionate enough to understand what goes into the making of film. Just money is not a prerequisite. Money is there. Banks can lend you money. There are enough and more financial, assistances one can get. But just because you have money doesn't mean you can make a film. Just because you once did theater in school doesn't make you an actor. So it's like learn on the job. If you want to direct a film, then you have to work with directors for a few years, understand the craft, the grammar, and then go ahead. So pursue your dream with enough academic information and on-ground work.
Somebody says that why have recent Bollywood films become too dark? We miss the light escapism of the earlier Dharma movies.
I think times are... Rocky Rani will be that, but it's a lot more woke, as I said, than the other. Well, yeah, I miss them too. And I think that logic and reason and rationale and subtlety and nuance are the new ways forward of so many audience members that we have to conform to the times. We can't get away by doing the overtly logicless, theatrical, overtly melodramatic things that we did. I've gotten away with Blue Murder in the past. I don't think I can anymore. I've thrown logic to the winds. I had the conviction, like when I told Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, imagine a mother leaving 8 letters for her child and asking someone to read them. My children are 4.5. They won't sit for a minute if I start reading a letter out to them. So I don't know what I was thinking then. It was just riding on conviction. It was the most banal, ridiculous, logicless film, if you think about it. But it was made with so much conviction that it worked. But today, I don't think just conviction is required. You have to go with the times a little bit.
Right. Somebody has asked about gender pay parity, and I think this is a really interesting point. They've said that in the past you have been very supportive of gender pay parity in Bollywood, which is also a challenge in Hollywood. What more can be done to bridge the gap? And also, there's 2 parts to this. Also, do you have any upcoming movies that have a strong theme on women's empowerment, especially given the shadow pandemic of violence against women in India and South Asia?
So we've already told a lot of films, from Razi to Guilty, to a film that is in development right now as we speak, to even in Ajib Dastans, we actually had the Neeraj Ghewan film with Konkana.
Beautiful.
It was called Kili Puchi, which also dealt with caste and sexuality. So we're doing a lot of that female-led. When I talk about content, a lot of female-driven film. We also have an original show which is going to be on Netflix, which is female-driven. It's going to be out end of the year. So there is, with Madhuri Dixit in the lead, there is a lot of female-driven content that Dharmatic are producing, and I believe in it very strongly. I would support it wholeheartedly. When it comes to parity, I believe that very strongly, that there are a lot of women who are deserving to be as well paid as the other gender, but many a time there are these, we just come with like a conceived notion that, oh, this particular man should get paid because why? He's a man. Like, I don't buy that at all. I mean, within my own company, I make sure that those disparities don't exist at all. There are a lot of women who deserve, like, literally much more than many men who think they're qualified. And I would be one of those standing front and center to make sure that they get it.
There's a very cheeky question which has to be asked. If Student of the Year was shot in LSE, what would you do differently?
Give it some logic which it didn't have.
And it would be London, which you love.
Yeah. Oh, God. The idea of landing into London is giving me some kind of an inner buzz right now that I can't explain.
Karan and I have shared many a coffee in London in the past. Yes. Someone asks, what motivates you? Once you've seen success, fame, money, what keeps you going?
You've never seen enough. I mean, I always feel like you haven't seen you haven't, I still feel like every film, every day, every story that comes to your table, every project that you take upon gives you a new nourishment in some way or other, new feeling of nourishment. And I feel like that feeling should never go away. I never feel satiated with anything, with a project that's worked or hasn't worked or something I'm working on. I always feel like the constant need to keep creating. We're storytellers and we'll be storytellers till the day we die. And that's what I want. So I don't think that I've reached I haven't reached what you may think is success. For me is just halfway mark. For me, it's like I still haven't really created the legacy that I really in my head and heart will be proud of. I still feel I haven't made my Lagan. I haven't made my Mughal-e-Azam. I haven't made those movies that are rightfully in the archives of Indian cinema. I'm not even halfway there, in my opinion.
Right. Are you excited about these are all questions from the audience? Are you excited at the opportunity of OTT media allowing you to reach new global audiences? Does reaching these new people change the kind of productions you plan to invest time in?
I think you should always tell stories that are true to the country you're making it in, and not worry about the syntax anywhere else. If it travels, it travels. I mentioned Lagan a few moments ago. I don't think anybody who made Lagan really thought that it would be an Academy nominated film. They made a film that was true to the story. Similarly, I'm going to make a film that is technically sound, that is content wise strong. It doesn't matter to me if it gets accepted at a festival in the country outside of India, or it gets nominated at the Golden Globes. I cannot think that is my driving. If it happens, I'm so excited and proud and will be humbled by it. But that doesn't mean I'll work only towards that. I just want to make great content here. If it travels, it travels. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
We didn't talk about music in your films, and that's always been such a strong element in all the Dharma films, particularly yours. What is your approach towards music selection in your films?
Again, it's my instinct. I'm tone deaf. I can't sing. I can't play a single instrument, but I've grown up listening to Indian music. Whether it's, I've always been part of whether it's classical Indian music or Bollywood music, Hindi film music, all kinds of music. I've just obsessed. Even now I carry my little Carva box with me everywhere. That Saregama's greatest invention. It has all wonderful songs that I grew up listening to. And I think all those melodies that I've heard have given me melody, vicariously. I have lived through those melodies. And that's why when I hear a good one, I think my ear just perks up and I say yes or no. I have no sense of music. I'm like clueless. If you ask me to sing a line, it would be the most disastrous thing that I could do. But I love music so much, and that passion drives me to hopefully make the right choices in music.
We have some alums from Pakistan, I think, who are also part of this. And one of them asks, do you watch Pakistani content? And if so, what shows do you watch? Probably your mom does.
My mother watches a lot. I still remember. So I was obsessed with Fawad and Mahira, like many people were, when I saw when I saw Zindagi Gulzar Hai and Humsafar. And I remember that was what I showed Shakun Batra, the director of Kapoor and Sons, when I wanted to cast Fawad and Kapoor. And I said, please see Zindagi Gulzar Hai and Humsafar. And he was amazing, and as was Mahira. And I've seen a lot of those shows. And previously, when in the 80s, when I was growing up, there were some terrific Pakistani dramas. There was Tanhaiyan, Parchaiyan, Ankahi.
Oh my God, so beautiful.
They were gorgeous. I haven't kept up. My mother watches a lot of them and is engaged with. She watches like Pakistani dramas as soon as the shows on TV stop, and then she starts watching those on her iPad. And she sleeps. She's nocturnal like me, so she's a huge fan and a big. I remember the day Fawad came home. She literally, for the first time, I thought, wore something nice and wore lipstick and came outside and sang. And I was like, Mama, why are you wearing lipstick? And she says, oh, Fawad's coming. Okay. So I was like, that was like quite a funny moment that happened. So yeah, she's a big fan, and I watched so many of the shows and enjoyed the writing thoroughly.
Okay, I'm just going to take a couple more, and then we'll have to wrap up. We mentioned Big Boss OTT, so you are doing TV. What is that? That's not a question from them. That's a question from me. What is that going to be like and all about? And also, the question from the audience is, are you continuing with Coffee with Karan?
So Big Boss OTT will be just like the term. It'll be OTT, and I'll have to be in OTT mode. I'm sure who's watched Big Boss know what it's all about and what comes with that territory. So, well, in Rome, do what the Romans do. So I'll have to play that game and tap into my second Gemini side and just go completely batshit crazy, trying to, go sing along with the madness of that show. It's going to be completely over the top, and they want me to play that game, which I will. Coffee with Karan will be back next year. I'm happy to report the 7th season will be on next year.
Yippee. How do filmmakers such as yourself strike a balance between creating films that attempt to address societal issues to creating films that are aspirational and full-on entertainment?
Well, it's either or, right? It's like if you make a film that is addressing societal issues, you can't suddenly shove entertainment in it. And if you're really making a hardcore fun entertainer, you can't suddenly give it a social cause unless you do it right and balance it efficiently, like maybe Dangal did, maybe Chak De India did. That's what you call a strong balance. But even there, they took some conscious decisions on not having suddenly break into song. Songs were part of the narrative. So very few films have balanced both, which have been engaging, entertaining, and yet have had relevant causes. Lagan, Dangal, Chak De India, Rang De Basanti, Munna Bhai, Lage Raho Munna Bhai. These are some of those films that have actually beautifully balanced the two. Otherwise, invariably, it lands up falling into like a mess, where you actually try to do a bit of both and land nowhere. So the genius of writing to balance both is what has happened with these movies. I've yet to make one of them, actually.
I'm going to end with two quick short questions. What's your typical day like? Ask someone. And do you have certain routines that you follow? And are you doing a lot of projects and wearing many hats as you are doing many projects and wearing many hats?
What is my routine? I wake up, spend time with the kids, go to the office, make sure I come back before they sleep. I work all the time. I'm a quintessential workaholic. I work all the time. I love my phone is always like, I'm always going at it. Even in the middle of the night, I'll be awake, alive, thinking of stuff, putting it down, sending it to the people who I need to, reading scripts. I work till very late. I'm obsessed with my work. My day, all of that. And, in the last 2 years, there hasn't been much of a social life, but it's actually been a lot more work because we've had to kind of you keep the ship sailing. What was the second question? Sorry, I forgot.
Well, just about your routine. Do you have a routine to your day? And and the second question I've yet to ask, the last, So the question is, well, actually, I'm not asking the question. It's too naughty. But the question is that since
I don't mind.
Because there are these people on this LSE committee who went to cathedral school.
So what are they saying?
To ask you if you regret not going to cathedral school.
I think cathedral regrets not taking me, because many years later, recently, Mrs. Isaac called me and invited me to a talk, and that's the first thing I said. I said I was rejected by this school, and I hope you regret it.
Well, one of your former Greenlawn's teachers is in this.
I say this with all humility, it is cathedral's loss.
Yes, and I just want to tell you that there's somebody who's listening in who knows you from your Greenlawn days, who was a teacher in infant school, whose son is a good friend of yours. So, yes.
Who?
Ingrid, and she's Rohan Arthur's mother.
Oh, really? Please say hi. I believe Rohan is doing some great things. Please give her lots of love and say hi to Rohan. I haven't seen him in the longest.
Yes. So that is the last question, but I actually know that should not be the last question, since this is an LSE talk, let it not be about cathedral. But I would like to ask you, since it is an LSE talk, when it comes to education, do you feel that formal education is important, or do you think learning from life and experience and getting, your hands dirty is just as good?
Look, I may be old world or I'm more traditional when I say this, but I'm all about formal education. I believe the kind of discipline that education gives you, more than the knowledge, it's the discipline of it that you really reap the benefits of much later on in life. Education didn't give me as much knowledge as it gave me discipline. And that discipline has kept me in good stead. So I'm all about a formal education. I don't believe in any esoteric bohemian way of educating a child. I believe you've got to go at a certain time to school. You've got to learn. You've got to do your assignments. You've got to give your exams. You've got to be aware of what you're doing and not doing when it comes to education. You've got to pass through the various stages of each exam, each stage, each milestone, and make sure that you do that. It's a no. It's if my children have to, that's the one thing I will never allow them to I will never allow them to fall off that wagon. They have to keep the educational aspect of their existence going, because I know that's how I was raised and that's how I'd like to raise my children.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's always such a pleasure to chat to you, and I look forward to having an in-person coffee with you sometime soon.
Very soon, Udita. Lots of love to you. And thank you to everyone at the LSE Alumni. And I look forward to seeing everyone very soon and in person.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We really appreciate it and we really enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Udita. Thank you. You were a great moderator. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. Next Saturday, we're having our next event, which is a talk and a mixer by the India and Pakistan Lahore chapter. And I hope you'll join us. The topic is FinTech Uplifting South Asia. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can also follow our YouTube channel. The links are in the chat. Thank you and good night, everyone.